Welcome to another episode of The Next Generation. Today on the podcast, I have my dear friend, Paige Harding. I am so excited to dive into today's conversation with Paige. Paige and I have gotten really close over the last few months. She is also a part of the CARL program here in Kansas, which is the Kansas Agricultural Rural Leadership Program. And that's how Paige and I met, and we just absolutely hit it off from day one. And Paige is just such an amazing advocate for the industry, voice for the industry. She has so much knowledge, and I just cannot wait to share more about Paige's journey and dive into everything like getting an attorney and lawyer things within agriculture and everything like that. So I won't chat too long, Paige. I would love it if you could just kind of take it away, tell everyone who you are, what you do, and then just dive straight into your background in agriculture if you want to.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Lauren. I am so excited to be here today. The minute I met Lauren, I knew that she was a trailblazer and that this girl is doing things. So I am so honored to be here, and I'm excited for the conversation that we're going to have. Like Lauren said, my name is Paige Harding. I was born and raised on a cow, calf, and crop operation outside of Dodge City, Kansas. So we grew dry land, wheat, milo, and have a cow, calf operation. And after graduating from high school, I went to the University of Kansas and then on to Washburn Law School in Topeka, where I recently graduated with my law degree, passed the bar exam, and am now practicing as an attorney with Kennedy Berkeley. At Kennedy Berkeley, we have offices located in Dodge City, Garden City, Hayes, Salina, and Kansas City. So we're really have a wide reach across the state of Kansas, and we are really able to provide that small town service that people really crave. And we're also able to handle those bigger level cases. So I'm loving my work so far. I do a lot with ag clients, a lot with sale barns, feed yards, co-ops, farmers, ranchers, everything in between really comes across my desk, and I love every minute of it. I really didn't think that I was going to be an attorney. I had no intention of going to law school my entire life. I thought that I was just going to go back to Dodge City and help my dad with his small businesses and running the farm and ranch operation. And the older I got, the more I realized that we need more young professionals in rural areas. And I noticed the lack of doctors, attorneys, CPAs, optometrists, all of those professional degrees that we really don't have many people coming back to our rural areas to do that. And so I noticed the need, decided that law school was probably the best fit for me. And I'm so glad that I did that, because now I'm able to really use my skills to help some industries that I'm so passionate about, which is our agriculture industry and our rural communities, and helping to grow those. So that was a lot, but I'm excited to dive deeper into that.
Yeah, absolutely. You have such an amazing passion for rural agriculture. And I think that, especially growing up on your family's ranching operation and then in Dodge City and everything like that, that really helps fuel that fire. And I am just so grateful for you wanting to take this step and everything. Paige actually was in the process a couple weeks ago of starting the process with my family personally, of putting our ranch and everything in a trust and getting everything like that lined up, because you know what? Hey, hello. We are also a guilty family that has pushed that off and pushed that off and pushed it off a little bit more until we finally got to the point where we're like, okay, so if something happens tomorrow, I really don't want to be fighting probate. So let's get this figured out.
Yep.
And so we finally started the process with Paige ourselves and everything like that. And it has just been such an eye-opening experience that I knew I had to have her on and just talk all of the things as far as estate planning goes, and dive. Paige, I know that's your specialty is kind of estate planning for agricultural operations. So kind of what got you started in wanting to start in that specialty, I guess. There's so many different routes that you could have gone as a practicing attorney, and you chose to like really focus your time and energy in whether it be estate planning or just like other business planning operations and stuff like that. What kind of like fueled that fire for you?
Yeah. So number one, trust me, you are not behind in the process with your family. I have so many stories that I could share, but I'm just really happy that you realized that and then came and decided to get one going. But my dad, aside from our farming operation, he ran some small businesses, and he has always raised my sisters and I to have a business mindset. I have two sisters, two younger sisters who are my best friends and also my business partners. So when I was 10 years old, my dad had me sit down at the dinner table, write out a business plan, and take that to the bank to buy our own herd of cattle. And I am not kidding you when I say I was 10 years old. Um, I was talking to my accountant in Dodge the other day, and he was talking about how he loves to pull up our first tax returns because my little sister, my youngest sister, didn't know how to write cursive yet. So it's just her first name, which is actually Lauren as well. So it's just Lauren on print on that signature line. It's really cute. But that taught us so much from an early age. I always tell the story, if we didn't budget and plan and buy enough hay for the winter, if we had to buy some off of my dad, he would charge us double. We paid rent, we had weekly marketing meetings, we went to the sale barn every Wednesday when we needed to buy new cattle, we signed the checks, we raised our hand in the sale barn. He had us do the whole 9 yards. So that really developed this business mindset at a young age. Additionally, when I was in high school, my sisters and I took some of our company money. It's PAL Cattle Company for our initials. And we bought a snow cone stand, PAL snow cones. And it was a legit snow cone trailer. We had employees, managed employees, did inventory. I mean, we did the whole 9 yards. That's when I really learned a lot about marketing, which is something that you are so great at. And I really, just from a young age, instilled this business mentality. And so that is something that I have always been very passionate about, is business. And now a lot of what I do with estate planning and transactional business work is helping people make decisions to better their businesses. And I've gotten more into estate planning because I have noticed such a need for having estate plans. Every year we are losing those more and more small farmers and ranchers. And I think a big reason that we are losing those small farmers and ranchers is because they don't have a good estate plan in place. And it is so important when you are going and talking to an attorney about the future of your farm or ranch or small business, you have to talk to an attorney that is well versed in agriculture, that knows what they're talking about. The average attorney that you go to when you're planning an estate, they will say, okay, we'll split it 3 ways, equal down the middle. Unfortunately, that doesn't work with farms and ranches. When you're doing farm and ranch succession planning, what's fair is not always what's equal. So that's a really hard idea to conceptualize, but that is what you have to do when you are thinking about, you want to keep this family farm for generations to come. I mean, think about these generational farmers that have their farms have been in, or farmer ranch has been in the family for 6 generations. I mean, of course they want to keep that going. So think, if you're the person who it stops with, you want to keep that going. There's such a legacy there. So that is really a need that I've seen, and something that I've become very, very passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it is sometimes just an easy thing to overlook. And then also, we don't want to think about our parents dying. Like, I think that
Exactly.
that's not a fun conversation to have for a lot of families. Luckily, unluckily, I grew up in a family where death was talked about pretty frequently. My dad's dad died when he was 13. And
Oh,
so it was one of those situations where we kind of talked about it pretty frequently. As a young individual in agriculture, I knew all of the things. Like, if my dad got in an accident tomorrow, I could go back to the ranch and take it over and know where all the records are, know where the calving records are, and the color coordinating that the Excel spreadsheet means and what everything does and where all the cattle are housed and the vaccination records and everything like that. Like, I know where all of that is, and I could, there would be a learning curve, obviously, but I could go back and I could do that. And
mhm.
so he set me up from a very young age in the same aspect of like, I had authority over my own cattle. I had to make decisions because he wanted us to be in a position where if that day did come that we needed to make those decisions, we felt empowered to do so.
Yeah.
I remember when I was like 12, I think I went and got a loan myself from the bank
Yeah.
to go buy a herd of like, I think 12 Angus cattle or something
Yeah.
like that. And it was one of the best financial decisions like that we could have made at that time. Like, I got a really great loan because I was young, and there are really great loans out there for young agricultural producers and stuff like that,
Yes.
and just opportunities there. But it just really instilled an amazing business mind into me. And then also, like, we knew that as a family that we were all very involved, and if something did happen, we kind of knew the logistics of how things were supposed to go. And I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of families, maybe you do know the logistics of the way that the business is operating, but if the person that's in charge today passed away tomorrow by a tragic farming accident or something like that, or they just were incapacitated, they broke their leg and had to go in for surgery or something like that, would you be able to operate and continue operating? And from a logistics standpoint, sometimes that answer is yes. And if so, that's awesome. But from a legalistic standpoint, do you really want to be fighting probate
Mm.
or fighting the courts and everything else like that to even be able to get access to the finances, to the bank accounts, to
Yeah.
like be able to operate as a business, like anything like that? You don't want to have to like get in a situation where you're like, okay, so we're at a complete standstill and we don't have hay bought for the winter yet.
Yes, you are exactly right. You hit on so many great points right there. Another big issue that I've seen in my personal life as well as in my law practice is that some dads, it's typically the dad, will, after you go off to college, if you decided to go off to college and come back and work on your family operation, dad's still making all of the decisions. And you haven't really had to make any big decisions yet. So you and I are so fortunate that our dads have had us make big decisions. So if the time comes where suddenly or expectingly dad's not there to make those decisions anymore, we're prepared to do that. However, I've seen a lot of people that, like I said, in my own life and in my law practice, who have never had to make a big decision. Dad's always been there to bounce ideas off of. And then they have a very hard time not only coping with the loss of a loved one, but being able to transition and run the business as they should. So that is so great for you. And I really hope that more young people in our generation will kind of, step up and ask to be at the decision making table a little bit more, alongside their dads or moms, who's ever in charge of the operation.
Yeah, I think that that's a great point that you just brought up. Like, ask to be at that table.
Yep.
Sometimes, like, our parents don't include us because they don't even know that we want to be involved. Like, I know that there are so many parents out there, especially in like our parents' generation, that didn't want to put that pressure on their children to be like, you have to come back to the ranch because
Yep.
that's what their parents did. They didn't really give them an option. They were like, yeah, you can go to college, but guess what? If you don't come back to this ranch, it's done, it's over. And they like put that pressure on them. So I know so many people that their parents were like, well, we didn't want to put that pressure on the kids to be like, you have to be at this table, you have to take it over.
Yep.
And so then they didn't ask for a seat at the table, and they didn't know that a seat at the table was even offered or available to them or things like that. And so I think that that is such an important first step, is just asking for a seat at that table to be like, hey, can I have some ownership over something, whether that be like some fall breeding decisions for just 25 head of cattle this fall or something like that, or whether it's like, okay, hey, I'm going to be in charge of buying the hay for us this winter?
Mhm.
What, like, let's talk about what we needed last year. What did we have left over? Where do we normally go through? Let me do that this year or something like that. Just like find one area that you can kind of start sprinkling in some responsibility to show your parents that like, hey, they have like they learn from the best, they know what they're doing, and then also just build up your own confidence in your own ability to be able to do stuff, because trust me, like there are so many business owners out there that would kill to have someone by their side every single day helping them make every single decision, and like learning from, look at your parents more as like mentors than your parents. I
Yeah.
think that that is such a great way to just reshape your mindset, that there are people out there that would kill to run a business with a mentor by their side every single day. And sometimes I think we forget that just because they're family.
Absolutely. I love that. So many great ideas.
Yeah, for sure. So Paige, I would love to dive into so many people have wills set up. I feel like that is a common discussion that's talked about like in your 20s once you get married, like, hey, make sure you go get a will set up, all of those sorts of things. But some people have wills set up, but not a trust. And I would love to talk about in ranching operations and just in general, what is the difference between a will and a trust? And why do most ranching operations really need to be in a trust over a will?
Yes, absolutely. So, the biggest difference between a will and a trust is that a will has to go through probate and a trust does not. So, typically, people will shy away from a trust because trusts cost more money up front. However, they don't cost much money at the end to implement when it really matters. However, a will is different. So, wills must go through probate, and that is basically just a long court process that takes about 6 months to a year to finish up. One of the biggest downsides of wills right off the bat is that if you lose a loved one unexpectedly, you are coping with the loss of that loved one. And then, hey, oh, you've got to go get this will probated. So that is something that is just it can be a very tedious, drawn out process depending on your family's unique situation. But probate's tough. I'm not going to lie, it's pretty tough. So, a trust is a much better tool for farmers and ranchers to utilize in order to pass down their assets, land, equipment, cattle, all of the things that are involved in a farm or ranch operation. A trust is a much better tool to do that. Really, the most important part of every farm and ranch operation is the land. It is the property itself. If you don't have the land, if you don't have the property, you cannot operate your business, period. So, really protecting the distribution of that land is something that trusts are so great at doing. Kind of going off topic a little bit here, when a lot of our farm and ranch trusts, we develop a scheme so that the farming kid will have access to the land. Like we said, land is the most important piece. So, for example, if there are three kids, and only one kid is farming and the other two are not, then we will typically have all of the land whenever mom and dad die, all of the land will go into a trust. And then we will create a path so that the farm kid, if there's one or two of them, they can buy that land back from their siblings at a discounted rate. Because when you think about it, if there are pieces of land that have been in the family for generations, why should each generation have to pay for that land and buy that land again? I mean, that's just silly. So we will develop a plan so that the farm kid or farm kids will have an easier time and easier access to buy that land in order to keep the farm or ranch in place. So really, that's the biggest difference between a will and a trust. I really recommend after people get married, typically is probably the best time, or when you hit your 30s, hey, come in, let's do a will at that point. Really, that's all you would need. If something were to go wrong, A will get the job done for you. But once you start to get into your 40s or 50s, you've got a couple LLCs, you've got more tracts of land, you've got a lot of cattle, you've got a lot of really expensive farm equipment. Then we will start looking at a trust, and you can continuously put assets into the trust. So if you, as you acquire more land, as you acquire more equipment, all of those can be put into that trust as well. So really, a trust is easy to manage and continue to manage. It's really easy to think of a trust like a business. Like, think of a trust as its own business entity. And when mom and dad pass on, how is that business going to be structured? That's really the easiest way to think about it.
So, why would you recommend still like going the trust route, even if, like, let's say we are in our 40s and 50s and our names are on the bank accounts and our name is on the LLC and all of that stuff? Like, our name is on everything. So, if something happened to mom or dad, like, yes, they may still be the sole owners of the LLC, but my name is on things. So, like, is that still going to go through probate? Like, what's that look like? Why do I still need a trust in that situation?
Yes. So I took a minute to write it all down before we did this. So I will go through some of the documents that have to be filed through probate. So you have to start the administration, and all of these things that I'm listing need a notice or petition, and you must have a journal entry or an order for each of these. So this is just like a peek into the probate process. Start the administration. You have to get an administrator. You typically have to put that notice in the newspaper for a couple weeks. It depends on the situation, but that takes about a month. Appoint an administrator. You have to send a notice to the creditors, a notice to all the heirs, have collect all the inventory and value it. Have an affidavit about whether or not anyone's been in the military, family settlement agreements. You have to have a final hearing, final discharge, final settlement. Typically, you have to arrange some sort of public auction and track down some heirs. I mean, probate is just such a long process, and probate also is about cost about 5% of what your estate is worth. So if there's a lot of land in that estate, that will quickly raise the price of how much you have to do with probate. Another reason is just so that your loved one, typically mom or dad, can have a little bit of control over what's to happen. There are also a few tax implications for probate and a will versus how it goes through a trust. So that's something, sometimes that changes year to year depending on the tax code, but there can be tax implications for both of those. So really, a trust is the way to go for farming and ranching families. It's really just going to be the smoothest transition for the family, because I think we forget sometimes that, it's hard to lose a loved one. And when you are dealing with the loss of a loved one and you have to make all of these big financial decisions for your family's entire livelihood, that's pretty serious. So, having a trust just helps to have a direct plan all in place. With a will or a trust, we do this a lot more with trust. But you plan it out exactly what you want. So the other day I was working with a client and they just had a brand new baby girl, and we were talking about what would happen to her if something were to happen to her parents. And so we put special clauses in there stating, when she's 10 years old, if she likes her school and is excelling in her school, and this person is able to take care of her, then she will stay with this person. If not, she will go to this person. When she is 15 years old, and if she this and this and this. So we really outline it and customize it to fit your unique needs. And yeah, there's just a lot we can do. They're a great tool for succession planning.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you talk a little bit more like let's come up with a fake scenario. So there's a LLC ranching farming operation that there are three kids and two of them are one is a rancher, one's a farmer with the ranching operation. They're involved. The third one is off in New York City. running on Broadway and not involved at all, there are certain situations where you said earlier it is fair is not always equal. And there
Yeah.
is such a grave importance of having an attorney that knows agriculture and is involved in agriculture and understands how to make it so it's not just like we're splitting it three ways. Well, what does three ways mean? You can't
Mhm.
split the tractor three ways. And guess what? I
Exactly.
need this tractor, like this specific tractor to go feed hay, and brother needs this specific tractor and combine to go do his things. And like
Yep.
things like that. Fair is not always equal, and equal is not always fair. So I would love if you could just kind of dive into just like the specific different ways that you can be so particular with the different clauses and just different things like that, just spatting some of those out.
Yeah. So in that sort of situation, we would probably do some sort of split when mom or dad passed. Brother who's only farming gets all of the farm equipment and all of the tools that he needs to do that. Brother that is only ranching gets all of the cattle and all of the equipment and tools that he needs to do that. And then unfortunately, the New York sibling probably won't get any of that. But why would he or she want it? Why would they need it? They those kids have come back and decided to work and take over that family operation, and they've been working alongside dad for all these years, and that's their entire livelihood, so they need those tools in order to do their job. After that, we would probably have all of the land go into the trust and be held in trust for 10 years, and have some sort, all of the kids would own it, a third, a third, a third, but it would be held in trust. So then brother that's farming and brother that's ranching can rent the land that they want, that they are using for their specific operations, and they will pay rent into the trust, which will get distributed out to each of the New York sibling and then the farming and ranching sibling. So really they're paying like 2/3 rent. And then we can put a clause in there that says farming brother can buy the fields for 70 cents on the dollar. Ranching brother can buy all the pastures for 70 cents on the dollar. So, really, again, that will be paid into the trust and will be distributed to all three of them. So, that will help that they are still getting that land and gaining that land, and they are still paying, but it is a much more accessible way for them to do so. So again, we don't have, dad bought all that land. Why do we need to have the same family buy the land again? And that may seem unfair. That may seem unfair because New York sibling isn't going to get an equal split of the land, but New York sibling can buy the land if he or she wants to, he can as well. So then you have to think of it that way, though, that farming brother and ranching brother are also going to end up with some debt because land prices are still high. 70 cents on the dollar makes this a lot more reasonable, a lot more attainable, but land prices are still high. They are still going to go into debt. So that is a good way to think about it. If you want to keep that farming, if that farm or ranch in the family, that's the kind of thing you have to do. I This was such a great learning experience for me because I saw how this went so terribly wrong. One of my first days of work, we had a client who came in. He had two sisters who both moved off of the farm and ranch, and his dad had created a trust where everything was split equally, a third, a third, a third. So his dad had spent his entire life, and of course, what did the two sisters do who didn't, farm or ranch anymore? They sold the land right away. So, then his dad had been working his whole life to build this big operation because that's most people's goals, to get that big operation, to get more ground, and then automatically 2/3 of it was gone in the blink of an eye. So then this brother had to buy back at full cost all of the land that he had lost, that his sisters had sold, And he spent almost his entire life doing that. So he came to us and wanted an estate plan for his children. His children were in kind of a same situation. Half of them were on the farm, half of them were not. So he was very distraught and he said, I don't want my kids to have to go through this again. So it's really hard. It can be a really touchy subject. But if you want the family farm ranch operation to stay in the family, sometimes you have to make these tough decisions, and what's fair is not equal. But I think that most siblings understand at the end of the day, because even if you're off gallivanting in New York, I mean, you have to still think, wow, I love the family farmer ranch. Most people still support it, I would say, or at least people that I've dealt with. So that is a long-winded answer to your question.
Yeah, but I think it really covered a lot of the things that like we need to understand when we're going into this like trust building process of like building out the trust and putting the family operation in one and everything like that. Because I know for our family, it was like, okay, so like this is the plan, but then you like actually sit down and you're like, okay, but like actually like needing to put it in clauses and like getting all the details out and stuff, it's like, oh, this is a lot more detailed than we originally thought it was going to be. And
Yep.
like there's a lot more clauses in here, even though like my family was just like, we just want to split it 50-50. Like we want 50-50. And then the other person can just buy the other person out at a discounted rate. But it was one of those situations that we were like, okay, even though we want to go 50-50, there are so many clauses in there that's saying like, okay, so like if we want to go 50-50, but one person doesn't want anything to do with it, what are they buying it back at? Where's everything being housed? Are you getting all the equipment and then all the land is going in the trust, or is everything going in the trust and you're buying it all? Like all of those certain things that you don't think about when you're just sitting down and having a conversation with just like your family at the dinner table talking about these things. And I
Yep.
think that really goes into the aspect of why it is so important to have an attorney that understands ag law and understands the agricultural operations. And they don't necessarily have to be raised in an agriculture operation, but they need to have a good understanding of what agricultural operations look like, how they run, all of those things. Because you might go get a trust put together that's 50 cents on the dollar in comparison to something that like you were quoted from an ag attorney or something like that. But the other one is going to not have the clauses in there that talk about the equipment, like Paige said, because the
Yep.
equipment is something that, like, yeah, that automatically needs to go to the sibling that is utilizing that equipment.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I Oh gosh, yes, so much. It is so important to get an attorney, not even just an attorney that if you have a farm and ranch operation, go to an ag attorney, absolutely, but you have to get an attorney that is the right fit for you. And I don't think people realize many times, it might just not be just going to one attorney and then doing all your business there. I mean, feel attorneys out. Go to a couple. I give free consultations. Your first hour with me is free because I really want to get to know my clients and help them the best that I can too. So you might not get a perfect fit the first time. So that's something to keep in mind. But I had a client the other day come in, and his dad had passed away, and they still had their spring calves. They hadn't sold them yet. And he said, oh, the attorney told me I couldn't sell these yet because we haven't started probate. And we said, sell the calves, put the money in the estate, have the check go out to the estate of blank, because you need to get those spring calves sold, because before we know it, we're going to have to be putting out bales of hay. And if you don't want to keep those calves through the winter, you need to get them sold now. So things that are very important to have an ag attorney for if you have a farmer ranch operation.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like all of the details and finite things that we don't always think about that are brought up when this process goes through. It's so important to have someone who understands and can also just sympathize with your family's operation and
Yes.
everything like that. Like if
Mhm.
I went to downtown Lawrence and found a lawyer down there that had never stepped foot on a ranching operation, could care less about American agriculture and everything like that, and had them build me out an estate plan, I guarantee you that their heart isn't necessarily going to be in it nearly as much as Paige is over here, where she's saying, like, no, like, I get this. I see this every day. Like, let's get you something that works for your family and your operation.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, I just think that it is so important to like understand personally where you're at with this too. I want to switch gears a little bit. Like when people are first starting this process, it can be a little daunting. It can
Oh,
be
yeah.
scary. It can be a lot of hard conversations have to be had, especially God forbid you have six siblings. I am so sorry if you have a bunch of people you have to figure this out with. I am blessed to only have one, so that makes it very easy for us. But my dad has like six siblings, and it is just a headache. And it's not a fun conversation to have talking about the potential possibility of mom and dad dying. And it's not fun to have in your early 20s. It's not fun to have in your 30s. It's not fun to have in your 40s. So you might as well just start having it now because guess what? It sucks all the time. So,
Yep. That's
can you talk a little bit more about just like starting the process, what that kind of looks like, first steps, where, like, if you are one of those people that you're sitting there and you're like, hello, I'm raising my hand, I have nothing planned. We probably don't even have a will in place. Where do people need to start?
Yeah. So give me a call or shoot me an email. My email is pharding@kenburke.com, or you can call my office. I'm sure Lauren can link it, and we will set up a first consultation. And as I said, that first consultation with me is free. For some reason, you might find that I'm not a good fit and you can go on to the next person. Really, at the end of the day, I want your family to get the best. So if you find it's not me, you can move on. But that in that first consultation, I will just be asking some questions. What does your operation look like? Do you farm and ranch? How much property? How many kids? Are any kids farming? All, just really getting to know you, asking all the necessary questions. Then we kind of get to the more serious part, and I say, okay, who do you want to handle your estate if something were to happen to you? Okay, who's a backup? If your kids are minors and something happens to you, who do you want them to go to? Okay, a backup. So even those conversations are very, very hard. Some people are blessed to know exactly who they want to take over their finances and exactly who they would want to take care of their kids. But many people don't. So if you have that conversation and are kind of prepared for that before you come in, that will help a lot. If so, we'll have all of those, more touchy feeling, deep conversations. And a lot of times people don't know. I feel like it's been about half and half. People will have an answer and know, and will get it written down that day. And then the other half says, okay, we need a couple weeks to think on this. So I'll hand you a list of questions or a list of information that I need from you. And I'll say, go think on this. Call me when you find out. So then we'll have another phone call or meeting, talk about how we want things split up. If there's one farming kid, or like we've talked about before, do we want to do the discounted land and trust? Do we want the kids to run the small business that you own? Do you want to require them to run it together 50-50? We'll discuss all of those things, and then I will draft the documents. And then we will have another meeting and we will walk through the drafts together. I will explain what everything means because unfortunately, legalese is so confusing. But don't worry, I've got your back. I will walk you through all of it. And then if we see anything that we want changed, we'll make those changes. If you decide you want to go an entirely different route, we'll go an entirely different route. So I can make suggestions. I will make suggestions. I'll ask you, what you want. I'll tell you the tax implications of this. I'll tell you how that will look how that could potentially look generations down the line, pros and cons of different clauses that you can put in there. But at the end of the day, it is you and your family making this decision. So I try to give people a couple different options and really just paint a picture of what all of the potential situations are. And then at the end of the day, like I said, it's your estate plan, you decide. So then after all of those changes are made, if any, we will have one final meeting, sign all of the documents, and I will keep some of the documents you will keep a copy of the documents, and there we are. That's it. Typically, I tell people to come back around like every 5 years to reevaluate their estate plan. Were there any new marriages, new divorces? Your kids are all over the age of 18 now. One kid came back and then moved off the family farm. So we'll go over all of those things about every 5 years. And sometimes there's not any changes. So that's great. So that's really the process. I'm super easy to work with. And like I said, I will give you all of the options, all of the what ifs, all of the possibilities. But at the end of the day, it's you and your family making those decisions. And sometimes I do have to facilitate tougher discussions. Sometimes people come in and have no idea. And I can be that person if you want me to facilitate and mediate those tougher talks that you have to have if you're making big decisions, if this could lead to something else, I can be that person to facilitate and mediate those. But really, it's a pretty easy process. I found that lots of people are very stressed and anxious and nervous when they come in, and then they leave feeling very happy and relieved. So like we've said, these conversations are very, very difficult to have, but they are necessary and they are so worth it in the end. It is so great to have that clarity and sense of peace. Definitely for the people who are creating the trust, because they will know that what they've worked their entire lives for, really, there is a plan. People always say, like failing to plan is planning to fail. And that could not be more true with estate planning. And then I think that children are often so relieved as well. Unfortunately, I had a client just earlier this week who they thought that his dad had a will or a trust or something. He had talked about making a trust a lot, and then he suddenly passed away, unfortunately. And they have called almost every law firm in Kansas because they thought that their dad had a trust and they haven't been able to find anything. So now they're all of a sudden going through the probate process. So these are hard conversations to have, but really the earlier the better and the more frequent the better.
Yeah, I truly couldn't agree more. And I think you hit on such an important point of the frequency of them too. Like, don't let this just be something that you talk about once and then you don't revisit and talk about again. Because life changes, plans change, children change, just all of the things change. And I think it's really important to continue revisiting it and everything like that. Yeah, and I'll have all of Paige's contact info down below for anyone that wants to just learn more about it. Go get that free consultation. Just talk to Paige. She can definitely help you out, even if you aren't in Kansas. Can help you out with a lot of those things. I would love, Paige, if we could take a little bit of a detour away from estate planning and talk about kind of the other side of stuff that you deal with, as far as like ag businesses go and business planning and everything like that. Can you tell people just a little bit more about what you do on that side of things? And we'll kind of go into a little bit more of that.
Yes. So I do a lot of business transactional work as well. And much of this is with feed yards, farmers and ranchers on like crazy ventures that they're going on, business ventures, sale barns, co-ops, all the things. And like I said earlier, it has been so fun for me to really be able to mold two things that I love so much, like the law and agriculture. So I have done some asset purchase agreements for farmers and ranchers who are starting new, interesting business ventures on their operation, Airbnbs, ag tourism type things. I deal with a lot of water stuff too. So, water rights compliance has been a big thing that I do, and also just some new water projects. So, for example, there's a city who recycles their water and then their wastewater, and then they will sell it to farmers to irrigate. So, diving into that has been interesting. There are so many things that the next generation of ag producers are doing to have more streams of income on their operation. And I have just loved witnessing it. And if I can find the time, I'm going to do it on my operation as well. So that has all been very exciting to see and to be a very small part of. Um, a lot of what I do too is updating operating agreements. So, for example, we had helped with the sale of a feed yard a couple years ago. And then they came back and they said, okay, this is our operating agreement, but we are not operating according to this operating agreement at all. So we went in, had a conversation with them, looked at exactly what they were doing, and edited that operating agreement just so that they could have peace of mind in their business. If anything were to happen, they were following all of the right procedures. So that was good. There are so many little things on a daily basis that I stumble across, like a pesticide drift issue that I had a few months ago. That was a fun one, very interesting, a different side of pesticide that I had ever been on before, but it was interesting. But there are so many areas where you don't even realize that you need an attorney until it's too late. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize it's a lot easier to be proactive and get a call, make a call on this first before you make this business decision. And, instead of paying for it later. So that is something that has been a lot of fun. I really enjoy looking over the contracts, honestly, all of the contracts and business documents, and just helping these producers, think about all of the what ifs in the future and then help them plan for all of those what ifs. We saw a really hard year in 2024 for our farmers. Thankfully, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas didn't feel it as much. We're all a little bit more padded with the cattle industry, but with the cost of the high input cost, high property taxes, farmers are really feeling it in 2024, and I think it's only going to get worse in 2025. So I've gotten a couple of calls lately of people just saying, what can I do? What should I do to prepare for 2025? We have a big election coming up, and that might dictate a lot of things when it comes to taxes. There are some Trump taxes that are going to be sunsetting that will be a huge issue. So I like being able to help out in my own special little skill set way with a law degree. So that's been really fun to explore and experience what all of those different ways that I can help out are.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's like, hey, Paige doesn't just do estate planning, guys. Call her with all your needs.
Yes.
All the things. If you're having water right issues, all the different things. I know it's fun every once in a while to just shake things up on your like kind of mundane day to day. Like, hey, yeah, this is what I do every day. But it's nice to sprinkle in a little bit of like the business planning and everything like that, of kind of going from the like Debbie Downer of like, yeah, we kind of need to talk about you potentially dying,
Yeah.
to, hey, let's talk about this awesome new crazy business adventure that you want to do, or
Yeah.
things like that, to
Yeah.
just, switch it up, lighten up the mood, all of the things. And it's really nice, guys, that like once you find a really great lawyer, to just be able to use them for all of your business ventures, and to continue to just grow that relationship. And we've talked about it so many times on this podcast that there is such an importance in building such a great team behind you, whether that like from a lawyer to a banker to a real estate agent to like everyone that you have in your corner, kind of really dictates how successful your business is going to be. And I think that a major portion of that needs to be a lawyer that you trust and someone that you can go to and talk about all the things and talk about all of the crazy ideas, and they can be that person for you that maybe your wife can't be, and say, okay, but how about this? Or what if this? And all of those sorts of things too. And it's so important to get someone in your corner that you can trust.
Yes, that is something that has been such a pleasant surprise for me with being an attorney. When I was starting to explore law school towards the end of my undergrad, I just kept thinking, like, my parents kept pushing, get a law degree, get a law degree. And I was like, ugh, no, that's so boring. And like going to court and
And now
stuff.
your sister's getting a law degree too.
Yes, she is. She is. Maybe we'll have to have PAL law firm or something
Oh my gosh,
someday.
yes.
But it has been such a pleasant surprise that I do, give advice and counsel. It's not what you think. So if there are any younger people out there who are considering getting a law degree, going to law school, really do it. There are so many different things you can do with a law degree, and you can shape your practice to really be whatever you want it to be. I'm really, like you said, I love switching up the mundane, talking about death, to how can we help your business thrive. And so I
Yeah.
love when I get those calls. So you do a lot of different things on a day-to-day basis.
Oh yeah, for sure. I couldn't agree more. So talking to kind of like that younger generation, I just want to hear a little bit more about like your decision to go to law school and everything like that. Give people a little bit more background on like who you are and what kind of formed that decision. So you went to KU, you were doing your undergrad, your family was pushing, your parents were pushing like just go get your law degree, like go get your law degree. What kind of pushed you to make that decision to get your law degree and not just go with your undergrad and
Yeah.
kind of not only go get your law degree, but go get your law degree and be like, no, I'm going to return to rural America and I am going to be a person in rural America that is going to serve farmers and ranchers.
So, really, I am probably like the odd one out weirdo. You don't hear this as many times, but my whole life, I knew I wanted to go back to Dodge City. I had a great childhood. We have a very strong community. And so I just always knew that that's what I wanted to do. But I do remember as I got older and thought, maybe it's not sustainable for me to just go team up with my dad, do everything with my dad how I thought I was going to. I started looking around at other, professional jobs that we had in Dodge City. And now that I'm an adult and I'm in the adult world every single day, I see that there are a lot of those professional job opportunities, what people would think is professional. But for some reason at the time, I was just like, oh gosh, what am I going to do? What value am I going to bring back to Dodge City? What am I going to do myself? And so, really, it was my parents nagging at me that made me go through law school, made me take the LSAT, apply to law school. But I am so glad that I did. Washburn Law has a great agriculture and rural law program. We have an ag law club, a rural practice club. Our ag law professor, there are a couple different professors that do a lot with ag law, advanced property, water law, all the ag things. And they were great mentors for me. They're still my great mentors. They really push rural law at Washburn, which is something I love. That's why I chose to go to Washburn, was because I knew that I wanted to go back to Dodge City, knew that I wanted to practice in a rural area. And so I was really able to get invested and kind of get a head start in that kind of programming. I had an internship with my firm that I'm at now, which was amazing. And one thing, kind of side note here, that people don't often realize, especially law students, a lot of people are striving for big law. They want what they see on Suits or The Lincoln Lawyer, like all of those law TV shows. And then they go get a big law internship and then just sit there and research the whole time. Whereas with my internship at a smaller law firm in a small town, I was able to talk to clients. I was able to sit in on those decision making meetings. I was able to handle bigger cases and bigger issues. Um, really, because I think that you're in a more confined area. So you have an eye on you. They can make sure that you're not messing anything up, of course. But they just trust you. And I think that when you go to a law firm, a small law firm, they want you to be there for the long haul. So they are going to take the time and train you and mentor you and introduce you to the right people. So that was something that was very pivotal for my now career, was having an internship at a small law firm. I had an internship in Dodge City with some attorneys, and that was in undergrad when my parents started pushing me to go to law school. I was a waste of time and space for these attorneys, but they were so nice to take me on, and they did a great job too of explaining, now this is why we're doing this, and this is what a will looks like, this is what a trust looks like. So from a very early age, before I even went to law school, I knew what that was, because people took the time to invest in me. And that's something that we see a lot in small towns. You might not think of people as mentors when you're growing up, and then you're an adult and you think, oh wow, that person was mentoring me. So in small towns, people just rally around each other, and I think they do a good job of rallying around their youth. And that's something that I was so fortunate to have. So when I was in law school, yes, very involved in all of the agricultural law, all of the rural law programs, and even beyond law school, I have gotten involved in some of that as well. When I was in law school, in my last year of law school, I started a blog. You can find it at paigeharding.com. And the goal is to encourage more young people to return to rural areas. If you're from a small town, go back home, practice law there, give rural living a try, give small town living a try. It is great. And I think that people don't take, if someone from a big city would take the leap to do it, they would love it, in my opinion, because you cannot beat the sense of community that you have in a small town. So my blog aims to do that, and also educate people on the issues, and just another outlet to get all of the information, all of the necessary information that some people are lacking out there. And I have really found, in my short career so far, I really want to be an outlet and a mentor for younger people, because if I can do it, you can do it. And I just want to help be the kind of mentor that I had, for more young people to return to their rural areas and small towns. When you're an attorney in a small town, you play more of a role than an attorney in a big city. Most attorneys in small towns sit on boards, school boards, church boards, a nonprofit organization, community foundations, chambers of commerce, and you are seen as an influential person in your town. You have the chance to make a big difference, and a chance to use your skill set to give back in a unique way to your community. And that is something that my parents instilled in me at a young age, and something that I believe so passionately about now. And I've already got a couple projects that I'm working on. So in my own community, and I'm really excited to continue those and keep those going.
Yeah, Paige, I just want to say it myself, even though I feel like I tell you all the time. You were such an amazing mentor and light in the industry. And I just cannot wait to continue to watch your business thrive. And as you return back to Dodge City here next month, and well, in 2 months, I guess, and all of the things that come along with that. And Paige, if anyone is listening to this and just needs someone to chat with, they're like, hey, I'm debating law school, I don't know if this is right for me. Or maybe you're not debating law school and you're just like, I want to return to my small town and I want to provide value to my small town, but I don't know what that looks like. Message Paige on Instagram or something like that, or shoot her an email. And I know that she would be more than happy to sit down with you and just chit chat about your life and your passions and everything like that. And try and kind of help you find that right fit and things like that too. So,
Yes.
Paige, I would love if you could give your one piece of advice that you would like to give to the next generation of agriculture as we start to round out this podcast.
Yes. So, my advice would be just to go for it. As someone who is starting her own operation from the ground up right now, just go for it. It's very daunting, very scary, as we've talked about so far. The input costs, the cost of land, property taxes right now, it's very overwhelming and it's very, very difficult to start as a young farmer or rancher, but go for it. There are so many programs, USDA, FSA loans for young farmers and ranchers. That's also something that I can help you with. But really just go for it. It will pay off so much in the end. And really, that applies to anything that you're doing. If you are thinking maybe law school, just go for it. If you're thinking maybe you need to sit down and talk about an estate plan, just go for it. So just go for it, jump right in, and it will all pay off and work out in the end.
Oh, I absolutely love that piece of advice. And I feel like that goes right into what Paige and I were talking about off camera before we started this episode of all of our business adventures, all of the things that we have going on in our lives, and just the way that Paige and I function as adults of, you know what, we're gonna figure it out. We're gonna go for it. We're gonna figure it out. And everything like that. So Paige, thank you so much for your wealth of advice that you shared today. I can't believe that was already an hour. That feels like it flew by in the blink of an eye. Guys, everyone listening, I will have every single one of Paige's links linked down below. Her email, her socials, her everything else that we talked about. I will make sure that it gets linked. That way you guys can go follow along on Paige's journey, follow her blog, everything like that. Go get your taste for rural living, all of those sorts of things. And guys, if you do want to reach out to Paige, please do so. Get that free consultation. Just go talk to her, see if you guys would be a right fit, and all the things. So, Paige, thank you so much for coming on. And to all the listeners out there, we will see you next week on another episode of the Next Generation podcast. See ya.